and welcome to Hidden Gems. Today I'm with Elizabeth Price, author of Haunted End. So first of all, welcome for being here. So, would you like to tell me a little bit about yourself? Like, how did you get into writing, and was it something you always wanted to do?
Well, I kind of just started writing. I was really big into reading science fiction all the time when I was a kid. And my parents threw me in the back of a car one day and drove me to the Grand Canyon, and I was bored out of my mind. And I had read everything in the back of my car. So I just started writing, and I haven't stopped since.
So I noticed in your bio that you lived and worked in haunted buildings. So have you ever seen a ghost?
Oh, yeah. I had one that I actually worked at a real estate office who first couple of days I worked there was fine, and then they left me alone. And all of a sudden, all these really strange things started happening where I'd pick up the phone and they would say, I'd hear, "I can see you." And then I couldn't make any phone calls. And I think after a while, all these crazy things like the radio would start out of nowhere and these just creepy voices everywhere. And I finally, my manager was there and I asked her, so what is with this building? She said, what have you seen? And I started telling her, she says, well, it used to be a rundown crack house before we updated it. And there was a couple people who were killed in the back room. And one person hung themselves. And it's like, yeah, they're still here. I like the job, but I'm grateful not to be there anymore. That place really spooked me. But yeah, it was an interesting experience.
Wow. I would have run out of that building.
Well, after a while, I got mad at the ghost and said, just let me leave. I just need to make a phone call, okay? I would get in there and start yelling at him, getting back at him. And it didn't really work, but I guess ghosts just don't pay attention or don't care. Well, maybe that's a little bit why I came up with Sam.
Oh, well, you definitely had a lot of inspiration there.
Yeah.
So, are you interested in other paranormal activity, or is that ghost the only thing?
I actually do drag my husband around to a lot of different paranormal sightings in California, Nevada, Arizona, and sometimes it's very interesting. I love the stories behind the paranormal events. Like one of the questions you were going to mention was the Juniper Hotel, and that's actually based on a hotel I went and visited. And so I base a lot of my stories on actual events that I have gone and talked to the people who work at these places. And they tell me about, okay, yeah, such and such we saw the other day. And it's amazing kind of people that you don't think would talk about ghosts. And they're like, oh, yes, and this happened, and this happened. And it's like, oh, that's cool. Okay.
Wow. I'm going to read that book differently next time. I'm planning to read it.
Well, the new one's coming out soon. Make room.
Oh, when's that coming out?
The publisher has said, I guess we're talking about March now, is when Liminal's going to be releasing that book.
Oh, look. So besides the hotel, does anything else inspire Haunted Ends?
Well, originally the story of Haunted Ends, I had been brought on to a opportunity to write for a television show that was based on haunted sightings, the UK sightings or the haunted Hollywoods, the TV shows. Yeah. And it fell through. And I got a little frustrated because I really wanted to be part of that show. And that just kind of inspired to, well, I got all this information. I might as well start something that's similar. And the whole idea, the whole concept of having Dead Ends crew going and investigating haunted hotels, and it was based on me losing a job.
Well, something good came of it. Yeah. So it's a pretty good book. So I can't wait to see the next one. Where did I get? So you take a very light-hearted approach to death, because that was one of the things I liked about the book. It's quite funny, but is that a reflection of your own approach to it?
Well, over the last, starting in about 2009, I lost about 13 people in a row, and they all had died. in multiple ways, and some of them all of a sudden, some of them you knew it was coming. And after a while, when you're visiting a funeral 1 to 2 times a year, you kind of have to put a little bit of a lightheartedness to it. And I suddenly realized these people that have left my life are still here. Like a recent person who had passed away was my husband's uncle Vito. He was one of those larger than life characters, and he is still around. You can still feel him in areas, and you're still wanting to yell at him for stealing the last meatball or something like that. These people, just because they no longer have their shell, doesn't mean that they're not here. And you have to kind of put a lightheartedness to this, because even if you're not there, you're still there. And it's difficult to just constantly be sad about not having someone in your life when you see that their presence is still around you, and you have their pictures, and if you're anyone religious, you know that you're going to see them again. Or even if you're not religious, then they're still here. But that's kind of why I have that kind of a lighthearted approach to death. It's just when you faced it so many times, you know it's going to happen. You can't be afraid of something that's going to happen.
Thank you. That's such a nice way of looking at it. So,
I know it's a odd way of looking at things, but
I know, it's nice. It's you know, I'm not sure how to put it. It's just a nice way of looking at it, because you're not losing someone; they're still there.
yeah,
So
they're still
there. The characters Sam and Rocky, I really loved them because the way the dialogue between them was so good. Were they inspired by anyone?
When I first started writing the story, came up with the idea, I had read a story from in a men's magazine about Peter Dinklage from Game of Thrones. And it was before, it was like the first season of it. And I thought, wow, what a cool guy. I thought, his personality came out so well in this interview. I just thought, I would love to write a character like him. And he was my inspiration for Sam. Or he would be a lot taller, I guess. But yeah, it was basically, he was my biggest inspiration. Rocky, I hang a lot out at Huntington Beach, Surf City, USA, basically. So I see a lot of beach bums, and he just kind of popped in my head, where he's like this surfer kind of guy who's kind of out of his element. He's had a strange background. His mom died, and so he kind of came about that way, just from me sitting on a beach one day, seeing a guy coming up on with a surfboard. But the rest of the characters, I think my favorite one would have to be Sylvia. She is based on an actual woman I knew, and very larger than life. I would go down to Mexico with her and my grandmother, and she would go and take blankets off of places because they'd offer them to her. Just walk away with them, and she's just one of those really crazy characters. I can't wait to get more into that particular character.
Okay, thank you. I found it strange that you said Peter Dinklage. That's exactly who I imagined when I was reading it. So you did a very, very good job there, then.
Oh,
good. Thank you so much for talking to me about the book. So, please, you have to get in contact with me as soon as the next book comes out, so I'd love to read it. So.
Also, if you want any more information about the Juniper Hotel, that was one of your questions. There is more information about that. I wrote an article about that on my website, and it has pictures of the hotel that I used. They allowed me to go into the hotel and take pictures, and it's on espwriter.com.
I'll put a link to that on the blog. Thank you so much.
Okay.